Thank you. Good morning and welcome to all of you for this panel discussion on tech interventions for a sustainable future. It's an interesting coincidence. In a short while from now, there is another global climate summit that is going to start elsewhere. It's the COP28 in Dubai in a few minutes from now. So while while the COP is more focused on the political action and what needs to be done on a larger scale, on a country level, and commitments on a global scale, we are here to discuss on the more interesting part, the how part of it. So we have people from diverse fields here. So we are going to see how, what technologies, what solutions are available today to address some of the problems we are facing. So just to give you a context, you all know climate change is undeniably the biggest crisis humanity is facing today, right? From rising sea levels to erratic rainfall patterns, from heat waves to the quality of air that we breathe. Climate change has impacted all walks of life, right? And not only for humans, this is for all species on Earth. All said, but we also have advancements in technology today to address a lot of these issues. We have seen that the adoption of renewables has gone up tremendously in the past decade and a half. We have advancements in IoT, sensors. In fact, the very basis of global climate action, the COP and the Paris Agreement is based on technology, right? It's based on data. Science has given us very clear facts, very clear data, estimations saying that if we follow this path, we are not going to survive more than a few decades from now. And that's how all the action related to climate has started. So, without any further delay, I would like to, start the panel discussion with the panelists here. Starting from the first round of questions. This is more like a rapid fire, you can say. What actually do you think when you hear the word sustainable future? Starting from Claudio.
Thank you very much. I think that one important aspect to reach that goal is one in which the behavior. Our human society is something that is very complex. Okay, that we have that has a lot of different actors that are at completely different scales. That they have completely different scales, but importantly, they have completely different goals. In order to reach a sustainable future, what you need to get is an alignment of the behaviors of all these different actors. In some cases, it may be something as simple as a farmer, or let's say as a small scale as a farmer. In other cases, you have governments and companies, etc. And as you will, as part of what we are trying to look into when designing blockchain-based systems is trying to align behaviors that you cannot align by traditional means. Okay, in order to get there, of course, there are practical elements in getting this sustainable future that are important from an operational point of view. But I think that we also need to think as well ourselves in abstracting the way in which we think the systems and looking at the way in which, looking at the big picture, looking at how holistically we can get all these different actors working together.
Thanks. Sagar, what comes to mind when you hear the word sustainable future?
Yeah, so since it's rapid fire, I thought I'll keep it, small. Maybe we can say it as alignment of social, economic, and environmental impacts for a good future. So that's what I think. And long term, because if we don't do all of these three things, in alignment, we would not have a long term future.
So in my point of view, I think sustainability is all about how do we leave this world better than how we inherited it. In simple words, that's what it means. And how can technology enable behaviors? I think Professor talked about the behaviors, right? I think what cannot be measured cannot be improved, right? I'll take a very simple example. Sometimes in our installation of water meters in your apartment communities, I'm sure you'd have seen a significant change in the way how water is consumed and wasted, right? I think we have to use technology to develop and sustain responsible behaviors using which we can leave a better place for our coming generations to come. That's my point of view.
Excellent. So we got holistic, long-term, and behavior-related. We got all the keywords required for a sustainable future. So now coming back to Santosh, specific to your field of work, Veolia being a leader in water, waste, energy management, what are some of the key transformations that have happened in this field that can lead us to much more sustainable solutions?
I'd like to start from sharing some metrics in terms of how we are water stressed, right? I think if you take our country, India, we are more than 60% of our country is either highly or heavily distressed in terms of our water, right? And if you look at it, 80% of our wastewater goes back to our natural streams untreated. That's a big challenge. Now coming to Veolia has three complementary businesses, which is water, waste, and energy. And I'm a part of the water business, right? So what we do is we manufacture membranes that goes into the wastewater treatment, sewage treatment, building zero liquid discharge systems. That is now a mandatory requirement for large organizations, right? So, and we also have built a bit of analytical capability on top of it. It goes back to what we talked about, sensors and controls, right? Bringing that analog data in terms of how can we capture scaling in our systems, how can we capture the pH of the water, how can we capture corrosion, because we are dealing with sewage, right? So bringing those data into our connected platform, what we call as asset performance management platform. So that has helped us in significantly reducing the downtime of some of the systems, because when we have this large systems that helps in terms of recycling and managing this water, the downtime has two impacts. One is it lets the waste go untreated into the environment, which causes pollution. The other is, it causes significant amount of operational OPEX expenses as well. So we use technology, like the APM platform, to bring in this data, helps controllers manage this in a much more optimal fashion, manage this remotely, and can predict before some issue happens, right? Before the system breaks down, we can predict. We use AI and ML algorithms to. I think this is going up and down, I guess. So AI and algorithms to predict some of these behaviors and do predictive maintenance, so that we keep the system up and running without falling. Now there are some more technologies that we are evaluating, which probably we can call as next breakthrough, but we can probably go through that at that further point of time in the discussion. Right?
Sure. Thanks, Santosh. So, in the audience, how many of you have RO water filters in your house? Can you raise your hands? It's almost 100%. So, are you looking for new technology to replace RO, which wastes a lot of water? So, Santosh is the guy who you should be chasing. They're working on technologies to replace these as well. Coming to Sagar. So, in the field of agriculture, we all know food security is another very big issue that we're going to face because of climate change. So, what are some of the key transformations that you're working on in the field of agriculture, and what are the results? What is it leading to?
Yeah, so I would say it's we don't have one solution for all. One size doesn't fit all. So even if you want to categorize, I would say let's say the developed world or the European market, for example, the solutions for them would be different for say Asia and Africa market, because European farmers or the agriculture space is already moved in where they're already in the precision farming, or they're using sensors to do agriculture, that is improving their efficiencies, all that they're already doing it. Now for them, now the key aspect would be how do we get that data, and how do we get better insights, and how do we improve say their yield or nutrient efficiency, that is how much you input as fertilizer or cost, and how much yield you get. So they are already there. Now they are already benchmarking, this is the yield across globe and where we are, and theoretically where we are, where we should be. So that those things are already happening. But while we say that is happening on the other side, because those are the technologies where we are working on, where we have, for example, handheld sensors, which can the farmer can go and check on the field, okay, this is deficient, this is sufficient, and based on that he take a decision and he'll do it. Or this already is connected to an app, and a large company is already giving that service, and they would handhold that farmer. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so okay, it's loud. Yeah. So also for larger farmers, because their farmers have more than 100 acres of farms, right? 100 to 500 to 1,000. So there we have tractors which have sensors, which use imaging and scanning technologies, which are doing real-time estimation of what are the nutrients required, and this fertigation is happening real time. So, or even they are not going into drones, but you can see that fertigation where in India we would manually go and put this fertilizer, right? So they are already on tractors, and they are already doing acres of land, in a day. So that problem is different. So we are trying to get faster scanning technologies which can do it even faster and more precise. So that is that part of the story. But when you come to India, we are starting with precision farming. That is, we are helping farmers to understand what are the best practices, to even understand what is the baseline, what is the amount of yield they can get if they do all of this. So that is one part of it. Now there are basic sensors like soil moisture, temperature, pH, those things are getting installed, and we are trying to get that data. But these are just to even set the baselines. And drone and these things have just started, but I don't think they're not I don't think, but I wish they scale up fast. But there are of course challenges. So you can see that there are different challenges, so there are different solutions. So yeah, in summary, these are the things I can think about.
Excellent. Thanks. So you can understand, and it's also heartening to know that IoT and AI is not only for the high-tech industry, but it is going to be mainstream in agriculture, and it's not only going to increase the yield, but also optimize the use of fertilizers and other essential resources. It's excellent. Coming to Professor Claudio. So you're an expert on blockchain. You've been one of the early early researchers to study cryptocurrency. So, by the way, if anybody has doubts on cryptocurrency, which most of us don't understand, Professor Claudio is the guy. He's one of the early researchers on cryptocurrency globally. So, how did blockchain change the financial landscape, and what do you think about other areas that you foresee getting into this technology, and how's the link with sustainability?
Yeah, thank you. I think that one thing that blockchains allowed to do, and I think that this is the main feature that it has, is trying to answer the first question that I said before in terms of sustainability, which is aligning the behavior of completely different actors to try to achieve a specific goal. At the end of the day, most of the blockchains that have been implemented ended up being a dystopia rather than the ideal that they already originally had, because they had placed some of the economic incentives in wrong manners, because also people that were designing them didn't know exactly how to achieve that. However, even with these shortcomings, it has been a very interesting journey, because it allowed to develop, for example, in terms, as you mentioned at the beginning, in terms of finance, a lot of new possibilities, like, for example, creating liquid markets that allow people to exchange value constantly without having to wait, and that work without any kind of intervention. They work automatically. Okay, but here we are talking about sustainable future, and there were two things that I like that first Santosh said and then Sagar said again in different contexts. First talking about water, then talking about agriculture, which is the need for quantification of what is happening using the data that we are continuously collecting, doing analytics on them in order to do decision-making processes, but informed based on the data that we have been collecting. And one thing that blockchain is very good at, actually is one of the first things that blockchain does beyond aligning behavior of individuals, is bringing transparency to everything that is happening in a specific context. And it is not only transparency, because you could say, okay, we can store supply chains in the blockchains and try to trace food produced, for example. The other thing that is very important is that it may also introduce accountability to the actors that are inside of the system, and allow us to not only to bring transparency, but eventually understand who are responsible for specific things that are happening. One thing that you may argue is, okay, if we want to store data, we can store it wherever we want. We can store it locally. And the difficulty that it has with this, because I fully trust the vision that Santosh and Sagar were saying related to analytics, is the problem that exists with that is that if the data is siloed in a specific environment, you do not have the production of whole data ecosystems in which you have service producers that allow you to make tools to analyze the data in such a way that it eventually allows all the other stakeholders to make decisions based on that. And I think that if you have data stored in secure manners or centered around distributed ledger technologies, one thing that you can do as well is produce standardized tools that constantly analyze the data in the same way and create whole ecosystems in which all the stakeholders, even policymakers, governments, etc., can also leverage on the information that is contained there.
Yeah, absolutely. A very important point is bringing transparency into all the transactions and the data. So, a very simple example is you must have heard about renewable energy certificates. When you get renewable energy certificates from different third parties, so how do you make sure that there is no double counting of these RECs? Today, it's very difficult to do that. There can be a lot of people claiming for the same REC and claiming, higher percentage of renewables in their operations. So those kind of things can be addressed with what Professor Claudio is saying, blockchain, a distributed ledger. Now, moving on to Santosh again. Santosh, what according to you will be a game changer in the future? What are some of the game-changing technologies that you are betting on in the future?
Very good question. And I'd like to answer that in two different angles, right? Let's agree that technology sometimes has a lot of hype curve around it. So we need to be careful about not riding the hype curve. That's one part. But I think the breakthrough can happen in terms of how do we use technology in a responsible and efficient manner. Now, I can give you a couple of examples that Veolia currently is doing, right? So we have an IoT-enabled asset performance monitoring system. But if you look at world over, these systems are most of the times designed from the asset point of view. That you have an installed asset, right? How do we optimize the efficiency of an installed asset? And if you rethink that design in terms of the value stream, right from your sourcing of water, treatment of water, how does it go into the consumption? It goes into the wastewater. How does it go into the recycle? The waste goes into maybe a fertilizer because it is rich with nitrogen and phosphorus and other types, and then that water gets recycled. So if you can visualize how the water, the value stream of how it flows, right, using this technology, that brings the transparency that we talked about, that brings the visualization for organizations, companies, corporations, countries to look at how we are doing in terms of our say-do ratio, in terms of this is what I say I will do versus this is how I'm actually doing. Right. So using the currently available technology in a more efficient design is one breakthrough. We talk about IoT and we talk about Industry 5.0. The humans and robots can talk to each other. It's still a little futuristic in the way how we talk about it. But what we have done in Veolia is that we have launched Veolia Secure GPT, which is an internal tool for our employees to leverage the generative AI capabilities in a much more secure fashion. We want to make sure that the data doesn't go out into the public, which those confidential and intellectual properties which we don't want to leave it outside, right? Now imagine the possibility if we can build on top of that the wealth of data that we already have through the APM, build some large language models on top of it, where some of these operators can talk to these machines like how you and I converse, right? That's a great breakthrough in terms of, you really do not know who you're talking to, but you still have the wealth of data. You build, solutions, you build recommendations that are prescriptive in nature, which people can act upon. And I'm pretty excited about building something of that sort. The third part I also want to talk about is digital twins. Much spoken about. I'm very honestly, I'm yet to see a full-blown implementation of a digital twin. Perhaps in the transportation sectors, yes, but in other areas, I'm yet to see it. But that has a great opportunity again in this water business, because you can do a digital pilot plant, and with the factors that we capture in terms of your the caustic properties of the data, the pH, the corrosion, and all those things. If you can model it in a digital world without having to do large capex investments, that's a big game changer for organizations and countries, so that you can really look at how this works, field test it, and if you have a fair success rate that, okay, now it's ready to go and invest in those, that probably would also be a game changer in my opinion.
Okay. So as a follow-up question, Santosh, you mentioned about the digital twin. Do you think there's a possibility of digital twin on a large scale, maybe a city scale, to address some of the fundamental issues that we face, like power crisis, power shortage, or water crisis, water scarcity? Do you think that is in the pipeline? Do you see that happening anytime in the future?
Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. The challenge, however, I see would be the data and how we model the data. right? Because any operating system has a lot of characteristics which operate upon different data sets and how those data behaves, right? So most of the times, in my experience, the implementations that I've seen is we take into consideration 3 or 4 data points, critical data points, and see how they behave with each other, and primarily a regression modeling in simple words, right? Technology words, do a regression modeling and evaluate how they operate, right? And then build that into a visual kind of a model, right? But I think in real world scenario, the parameters are huge, the influencing factors are huge. I think we will have to build some kind of a common minimum model, and then with the technology today, it is doable, but I think the stumbling block is not technology, it is about how we model and design it.
Okay, thanks. Sagar, coming to you, what does it take to really scale up the kind of transformational concepts that you're talking about on a mass scale across India, across different states in India?
Yeah.
What are the barriers that you are seeing right now?
Yeah. See, I wouldn't say barriers, but I would see it as opportunity, because, there's a lot of business opportunity because so many solutions are yet to be done, at least in India and Asia, right? So, solutions already, Santosh, whatever he's saying, it's already there. We just need to implement it, in agri space. So, that is a one-line answer. But then, we need to go into a bit more details, right? Because we already know that there's so much focus on water in utility and industry space, but then that constitutes only 5 to 6% of the entire water consumption, right? There's so much of focus on that, but then 80% of water, I'm talking in India context, so numbers can vary. So in India, 80% of water is getting utilized in agriculture. Now, there's no focus on that, or the focus is less. Can we use the same technologies there? Definitely. Can we reduce that? Yes. Simple thing, this is something which, just came up to me in the mind when Santosh was talking. Just think, he's saying that there's so much of wastewater which we are producing, right? So that wastewater, what he thinks is waste, which is nitrogen, is the input for, the crops, right? We put urea or nitrogen to the crops to grow. So can we connect this wastewater directly to the farmers and we can reduce the load directly? So even if we impact, say, 1%, 2% of, agriculture, that would be huge in terms of the absolute number, whatever we can save. Now, how do we take this decision, right? We don't know whether this is going to work or not. That is why this data comes in. If we can get data on, what are the numbers, where are we consuming more accurately, then we can take informed decisions. So that is one of the, big opportunity. Then second, I would say soil. Everyone, we've heard this, right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but it is not true, because now the nutrition of an apple has gone down so much that we need probably 5 to 6 apples a day to keep the doctor away. So, it's funny, but it's actually the truth. So, this is because of various things. It starts from seed quality, right? We don't have measuring equipments to do seed quality. How do I know if I use this seed, you will get this, thing? So we need data on that, because we can't just put the same seed in the same soil for the same, for the same climate. It might probably work, but the soil changes every 100 kilometers, the climate changes every 10 kilometers, so it's not the same. So we need to measure all of this and get this data and then take an informed decision. So that's on the input side. Then when you go to the soil, now, the soil health is deteriorating. The organic content in the soil is reduced by almost 80%. So what does this do? It doesn't have water retention property because of this. So what happens when water doesn't, soil is not holding water? Now we need more water to, do the, get the yield. So just think of this number, it's astonishing. Even if we increase the organic content in soil by 1%, right, 1%, and you can reduce the water consumption by 30 to 35%. Imagine 30% of the entire 80% of India. It is huge. But now, what are the sensors? We have sensors, we need to put them and connect them. We need to take again informed decisions because we need to do soil mapping. Soil is not the same everywhere. So we need blockchain to even understand what is happening, to get transparency of the data, to get it to the cloud, to understand, to take more informed decision. Now, that is a, next part. And, finally, I'll come to the yield quality. After thing is produced, you don't know whether the apple has nutrients. We are thinking that each apple gives me nutrient, but it's not, right? Or, any fruits or anything. We are eating it, but, we are not getting the benefit. Know. Why? Because we are not measuring it. What if we started measuring it, and then, instead of this packaged goods, where we know individual, concentrations of, elements or whatever it contains, what if all the fruits have this quality? Then I can plan my, my health will become better, then the wastages will, reduce. So this is all, reducing wastage, and it just goes back to the sustainability factor of it. Again, last part of it, by doing all of this, we will, once we use blockchain, that's where I think blockchain is a big thing, where you start measuring this, and you can actually, do this carbon credit system, and if the farmer can reduce his, consumption of fertilizer or water, then this carbon credit would be bought by a bigger player, and that money can go back to the farmer. So for him, it would be a big thing. This is a big game-changing thing, and only such technologies can do. So, yeah, I think these are the challenges, but these are the opportunities, I would say.
Great. Thanks for that. So it's amazing to know that there's such a big opportunity, such a big potential in agriculture for tech interventions. Can you imagine a future where, high-tech farmers deploying all the technologies that he's talking about, managing everything on his phone, looking at all the health of the crops? I mean, that's transformational. I think that's not probably very far away with what people like Sagar are working about, right?
Yeah, so if, we can measure the elements in the moon, why can't we do it here? So we have the technology here.
Absolutely. Claudio, now, what do you think is the unrealized potential of blockchain and specific to climate change?
Yeah. I think that the worst thing, as I said in my very first intervention, I think that the thing in which blockchains have failed were in which every time that they were implemented, they were just creating a speculative means to run speculation and to do a lot of things that become attached to high potential gains, financial potential gains. Okay, and I think that the thing that is the unrealized potential of blockchains is looking into understanding us better as humans, perhaps. We do not, you see that, remember what I said at the beginning, blockchains are about economic incentives, are about making people behave in specific ways, and the way in which they achieve that is through the design of incentives that simplify human behavior just as agents who want to maximize profits. And there are multiple things, and sustainability is a very important example of this, in which we do behave in specific ways because we care about other things that are not just maximizing our revenues. And this shows that we, on the one side, we as sentient individuals, we have a brain, we have we think of what is best for us in multiple dimensions, okay? And in blockchains, you can implement this realization that is not just about economic earning, it is not about financial gains. You can implement incentives that try to align with also our values as society, as humans first, as individuals, and then as a society, and you can implement them. You can think of trying to realize the multiple dimensions that we have concurrently. And I think that where I see that blockchains have not yet been properly utilized is understanding that we want much more than just do some very easy revenue stream in a very short time, okay? And I think that in the specific case of sustainability is, and there are other examples, but other very interesting projects that go into that direction, is we have to think that, and we have a digital means of doing that, is we have to think that there are multiple dimensions that we want to optimize concurrently, okay? And this is something that we can implement in blockchain, and you cannot, if you are only thinking of economic systems in which we just want to maximize profit.
As a follow-up, do you want to talk about a new project that you're working on?
Yeah, exactly. So I was also here for multiple reasons now in this visit to Bengaluru, and you see that sustainability is one aspect. There are multiple things that relate to our natural environment and how specific things that are happening in nature are just getting worse because other beings that are here sharing the earth with us do not have the proper ways of defending themselves. And in blockchains you can implement multiple things. One thing that you can implement as well is representations of different economic agents. There is a very interesting project now that is starting to give rise to the first pilot, that is the interspecies money, that is trying to create exactly these multidimensional incentives in which different species as well can, on the one side, can have economic autarky, therefore they can, for example, interact by distributing, by sharing value to other species as well in a manner that ensures the continuous growth and continuous development of the natural ecosystem. Okay, we're talking about digital twins. It's having a sort of digital twin of all our natural ecosystem and seeing how all these species can just empower each other and can also retribute others when there are marginal effects that they produce. For example, in case of humans, when they affect the activities of farmers, for example. And so we can have a scenario in which nature itself is also supporting its own activities. Yeah.
Fantastic. So watch out for this particular topic. So Claudio is not only talking about digital twin of some of the systems, he's talking about a digital twin, a possible digital twin of our natural ecosystem. So maybe you want to look up on interspecies money. That's what Claudio is working on in his new assignment, and I think it's a very, very interesting concept that will take shape in the future, I guess. So with that, we had some excellent insights from our panelists here. With that, now we have the floor open for a few questions before we wrap up.